Shalom, shalom, shalom. First off, we want to give all honors and glories to Yahweh, Bahashim Yahushai, Bahashim Rachakadash, Yahweh being the name of our Father, who the world inwardly calls God, Yahweh, Jehovah. His real name in the Paleo Hebrew, and Lashawan Kwadash, is Yahweh, which means he exists, and his only begotten Son, who the world inwardly calls Jesucristo, Jesus Christ, the Messiah. His real name in the Paleo Hebrew, Lashawan Kwadash, in the ancient tongue, and the pure tongue is Yahweh Shai, which means he is the deliverer, he is the savior of the nation of Israel. And again, starting with the 144,000 elect men and the 1/3 women and children, who are destined for salvation in the last days. All right. And double honors to our elders at Great Millstone, you know, who still rule well. Double honors to our elders and bishops at Great Millstone, and a sincere shalom to the 144,000 elect men, and all the brethren out there, all the Akim that are pushing His word in sincerity and in truth. All right. Again, this is your brother Zayath coming back at you with another, hopefully edifying lesson. All right, and as you can see here on the screen, we got, one of the two of the best, Israelites that ever lived. You know what I'm saying? As far as when it comes down to the boxing, to throwing them blows. You watching two of the greatest, Israelites go toe to toe. And but this is a perfect example on how pride leads to destruction. You know, because Taylor had it in the bag. You know what I'm saying? If you know anything about boxing, you know that boxing is a sport where you're not supposed to get hit. You know, and like for example, Mayweather. People don't like the way, but he has it. He has the science down. It's not to get hit. All right, and this is a perfect example on how pride leads to destruction. You know what I'm saying? Because, like I said, Taylor had it in the bag. He had all the rounds won. There was no need for him to keep going and getting and losing that fight. He would have won that fight. You know, unanimous decision. You know what I'm saying? But look at what happened to him. You know, because that was straight pride. He couldn't accept. He could, and this, for example, this is Proverbs 16:18. It says, "Pride goes before destruction, and an haughty spirit before a fall." Right. So Medrick Taylor, he just had that pride in him that he wanted to knock Chavez out. He couldn't. He wanted to go out with a all bang. He couldn't just accept that he was winning by points. He had the fight in the bag. He had to have that haughty spirit. He had to be prideful, and he got knocked out. He got knocked out. He got brain damaged. After this fight, he was never the same. But hey, like I said, there's this is the book of Proverbs 29 and 23. It says, "A man's pride shall bring him low, but honor shall uphold the humble in spirit." You know, because that's one thing to be prideful, and there's one thing to have honor. And like when we're out there proclaiming the name of Yahweh, Bahashim Yahushai, Bahashim Rachakadash, hey, we're having honor. We're honoring our Father. We're honoring His name. We're honoring that we're Israelites. We're proclaiming that that the kingdom of heaven is at hand. We're having honor. There's no pride in there. We're not being proudful. We're not being proud. We're not full of pride. We're nothing to be proud of. You know what I'm saying? We have honor. That's different. And having pride and having honor are two different things. We're not out there being full of proud, being full of pride. We're having honor for our Father Yahweh Ba'ashim Yahushai. But this is an example of, of being prideful, Meldrick Taylor, he had it in the bag, one of the best boxers that ever lived, but because he couldn't accept him just winning by points, he wanted that full knockout, and look what happened. He got knocked out. And he suffered brain damage after this. He was never the same. If you want to, go ahead and look it up, but we'll go ahead and read it again. This is Proverbs 16 and 18. Pride goeth before destruction, and a haughty spirit before a fall. This is Proverbs 29 and 23. A man's pride shall bring him low, but honor shall uphold the humble in spirit. All right? But like I said, if you go and look at this whole fight, you'll see that, hey, Meldrick Taylor, he had the fight in the bag, but because of his pride, he was brought low. He couldn't accept just winning by points. He wanted to go out with a bang, and that's what happened. He went out with a bang. He was never the same after this fight. Got knocked out, and this fight should have been his. And people talk mess about the referee. Hey, the referee's job is to keep the fighter safe. He's not the timekeeper. All right. But hey, with that, I want to say, hey, Kal Hala Yahweh, Bahashim Yahweh Shai, Bahashim Rachachadash. Double honors again to our elders at Great Millstone and our bishops who rule well. The Wadiyah Bahashim Yahweh Shai for those men. And again, I want to say a sincere shalom to the 144,000 elect men and the 1/3 women and children, who are destined for salvation in these last days. Shalom, shalom, and to all the Akim out there pushing His word in sincerity and in truth. And again, honors and glories to our Father, Yahweh, Bahashim Yahushai, Bahashim Rachachadash. And again, the water Yah Bahashim Yahushai for another day to be able to exalt your name. With that, I want to say, hey, shalom, shalom, shalom.
Taylor, ¿por qué fue tan difícil?
Porque él era un peleador más rápido que yo, más fuerte que yo, campeón olímpico, campeón mundial, invicto. Entonces yo tuve que hacer un esfuerzo sobrehumano, pelear al ritmo que peleaba él. Yo le pegaba 5 golpes, él le pegaba 10 o 15.
Observa de lo que es capaz un campeón, cuando el mundo entero ya lo ha dado por vencido.
Cuando llego a ese 12º round, que me dice Búfalo, Julio, es el último round, vamos, despierta, tú todavía puedes noquearlo, vamos, hazlo por tu familia, vamos, hazlo por México, hazlo por tus hijos. Dije yo, pues chica su madre, ¿no? A ver qué sale. Se me hacía increíble, se me hacía imposible noquearlo, faltando 15 segundos.
Sí.
Le pego ese derechazo, ¿me entiendes? Y lo pongo mal y se viene, le hago la vuelta y le pego el derechazo.